Robert Schwartz, one of my heroes. You really, really helped me heal from the death of my son, Erik. Your books are just amazing. It really gave me so much hope. I have them on my bookshelf, on my blog too, and a lot of people have also given me feedback that they've helped so much. You have 3 books, at least, right? Your Soul's Plan, Your Soul's Gifts, I have those 2, and Courageous Souls. I don't have that one.
You know, Courageous Souls is the original title of the self-published version of Your Soul's Plan.
Oh.
But then the publisher picked it up and they retitled it Your Soul's Plan.
Okay, all right. Do you want to first tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'd be happy to.
Go for it.
I'm an artist specializing in something known as a between lives soul regression, which we'll talk about more as we go along. But basically, it's a form of hypnosis in which you can find out on your own, through direct contact with the other side, what you planned for this lifetime before you were born. And as you mentioned, I'm the author of 2 books, Your Soul's Plan and Your Soul's Gift, the premise of which is that we ourselves plan our lives before we're born. And in the books, I explore the pre-birth planning of big challenges. The intention is to help people understand the deeper spiritual meaning of their biggest challenges and to heal from those challenges. And if your viewers are interested, they can read large portions of the books for free at yoursoulsplan.com.
But they're so reasonably priced. You might as well get the whole thing. You know, just get it, people. I mean, these books are so groundbreaking. They're so important. Now, what I want to ask is that, does it kind of mess up with your human experience if you sort of like get the cliff notes and, oh, that's what I'm here to do?
You know, I had that same concern when I started down this path, and I actually asked about it in one of the first channeling sessions for Your Soul's Plan. And the response I got, which really resonates as truth for me, is that if knowing about pre-birth planning would pull someone off the path that is best for them, one of 2 things will happen. Either they'll never hear about me and my work, or if they do, it will strike them as nonsense and they'll quickly go on to something else. And that resonates as truth to me, and I believe that.
I believe it too. You know, I think it's really important. A lot of my blog members, you know, people who seek spiritual subjects very often are lost. Maybe they've had a lot of difficulties in their lives. They have financial difficulties, and they just don't know what they're here for. They don't know what their life purpose is. So that's why I think your work is so important. People need to know that they are here for a reason. And to find out what those reasons are, of course, sometimes like, just give me the cliff notes. God, just I don't want to learn all this through hardship. Just give me the cliff notes. But of course, it doesn't work that way.
Well, you know what I tried to do in Your Soul's Plan and Your Soul's Gift? I focused on all the biggest and most common challenges that people face in life, because I wanted these books to help as many people as possible. So there are chapters about the pre-birth planning of physical illness, mental illness, abusive relationships, miscarriage and abortion, adoption, poverty, alcoholism, drug addiction, deafness, blindness.
Oh, yeah.
If it's a big challenge and it's fairly common, it's probably in one of the 2 books. And what I did in these books, as you know, is that I worked with some very gifted mediums and channels who in one way or another could find out what somebody planned before they were born. Basically, we talked quite a bit to very wise and loving beings on the other side, and we asked them, did this person plan this experience before he or she was born, and if so, why? And then in the books, I present all the information that came through. So it really is an attempt to give meaning to suffering that I think to many people would appear not to have it.
Yeah. I mean, if you really know why you're suffering, and you can find the value in it, that's when you can embrace it and be grateful for it and let go of the suffering. I mean, that's what I did. I was beaten so badly. My sisters and I, when we were very young, 2 of us had to run away to become homeless and eat food off the plates of people at restaurants. I mean, we're talking broken bone stuff, okay? And it was terrible. I had to hide behind furniture every time I heard my parents roll into the garage. And but then I realized I really got something valuable out of it. I learned how to be very assertive, and I learned how to be very compassionate and nurturing. It made me a better mother. And if I had not had that experience, I probably would have been some selfish, shallow bore. So when I was able to find those teachable moments, the value, then I was able to be grateful for it and then let it go. And yeah, so I guess knowing why you're here to suffer through your books, it will allow people to do that, to find the value.
It does. And one of the main things it does is that it helps people pull themselves out of victim consciousness in much the same way that you did. You know,
Yeah.
it's my understanding that victim consciousness is literally the single lowest frequency or vibration a person can be at.
Oh,
And
wow.
it
Yeah.
tends to be self-perpetuating because when you believe that you are a victim, you vibrate at the frequency of victim. When you vibrate at the frequency of victim, you are energetically telling the universe that you're a victim.
Mhm.
Well, whatever energetic statement you make to the universe always responds in the same way. It always says, yes, that's right, you are. So if you state energetically to the universe that you're a victim, the universe says, yes, you are. And it brings you more experiences that seem on the surface
Mm.
to confirm that you are, in fact, a victim. The way to break out of that is to understand that you're the powerful soul who planned your challenges. Then, if you also come into some understanding of why you planned them, that's even better because then you can learn the lessons in a much more conscious and less painful manner.
Yeah. One thing I really took away from your books is instead of being a pawn on a chessboard, being moved around by circumstances in life, it helped me, shift my perspective. And oh my gosh, so much is about perspective. So that I was looking down at this chessboard of life, and I was the one that was playing chess, pushing the pieces along the board. And so I think your books are very empowering. They give people their power back. And that's pretty.
Well, I'm very happy to hear you describe it that way because that was exactly what my intention was in writing the books. It's intended to bring about a shift from what you could call body personality consciousness to soul consciousness.
Mm.
And once you see things from the soul level, it's not as hard, it's not as painful. You
Yeah.
know what the lessons are, you can learn them much more consciously and much more quickly. It just makes an enormous difference in the quality of life.
It does. Did you just wake up one day and say, it's what I'm going to do? I mean, how did you get into this?
You know, this is a far cry from what I used to do and who I used to be. I was actually in the corporate sector for a number of years. I have an MBA, believe it or not.
Oh
And
my
I
gosh.
was corporate marketing and communications, which I didn't like at all.
Yeah.
And then one day I was walking down the street and I had an experience that changed my life. I had an experience of unconditional love for every person I saw. And when I say unconditional love here, it was a transcendent experience. It was an experience of divine love. It only lasted about an hour, but it changed everything for me because I understood through this experience that this love is who I really am. It's my identity as a soul, as it is for all of us. And when I went on to research pre-birth plans for the two books, every single plan I looked at was always based on unconditional love. And I think that's why I was gifted with that experience, because otherwise I still would have seen the same result in my research.
Yeah.
But I would have always wondered, how do I know that this is true?
Yeah.
Well, I know the pre-birth plan is based on unconditional love because I know the soul is unconditional love. That was my experience walking down the street that day.
Everything is love. All right. So, why did you think? What caused this 1 hour of the sense of unconditional loving the collective? Do you think it was something from the divine, a guardian angel? What happened?
I think it was my higher self. I think it was a gift from the soul level to me at the level of the personality. And I think strongly that it was planned before I was born. There are certain people, and I put myself in this group, who need an experience like that in order to facilitate the mission they planned before they were born. And that experience, even though it only lasted for an hour or so, it has made everything else possible. The two books, the workshops, the Between Lives regressions, all of that grew out of that 1 hour of unconditional love.
That must have been amazing.
It was.
I mean, I've had little glimpses of that sensation, even feeling love for the tree that that turn into this desk I'm sitting at, things like that. But it's ever so fleeting, unfortunately. But I have the attention span of a gnat embryo, so that probably has something to do with it. All right, let's talk about the pre-birth planning. How does that work out? Because I had Jamie Butler trans-channeled this woman. I think she's 100 and something years old, called Gracie. And she is one of the ones that sits at the table, and you come and you say, here's what I want to do. And she goes, are you sure you want that much on your plate? And it was just really amazing, the trans-channeling. She talked directly to my younger sister and I mean, it was, but what happens? Is there a council of elders? What happens?
Basically, there's what you could call a pre-birth planning session, where at the soul level, you get together with all the other souls who are going to play roles in your life, big roles as well as small ones. And you talk about the lessons you're coming here to learn. And then you put a plan in place that is intended to facilitate learning those lessons. So just to take a very simple and common example, let's say somebody wants to deepen in compassion. They would probably choose to be born to parents who are going to treat them with a profound lack of compassion. Now, why would they do that? Well, it motivates them to go within, cultivate self-compassion, and then the plan calls for them later in life to take the self-compassion, turn it outward in service to others. Mm. That's a very, very common type of life plan. We learn best on the earth plane through contrast, through opposites. So we often plan to experience the exact opposite of what it is we ultimately want to learn.
Yeah, and I think what we're, at least according to Erik, is we are here to learn all the facets of love that we are. Like to understand the facet of love, forgiveness, you might want to choose a life where you are betrayed. And so I get what you're saying. Does any of it have to do with karma? Now, Erik says there's really no karma, but like if you killed somebody in your last life, is the pre-birth planning, does that usually include that you're going to be murdered or?
My understanding of karma is that it's a feeling of incompletion with the past experience.
Oh.
So let's say that you did murder somebody in a past life.
Yeah.
When you have your life review, you will see that you did this, and you may or may not feel incomplete with the experience. Most likely you would. And so you might choose to be murdered or to have some other experience that would help you to become more compassionate, more loving, and see the other side of the coin, so to speak. But you're not judged by God. You're not judged by a council or any being external to yourself. It's you seeing your life in the review, and you decide, I'm complete with this experience or I'm not, and I want to balance it.
That is the best description of karma that I've ever heard. I mean, it was always a confusing point because people always talk about karma, and Erik says, no, there's no external force messing with your free will on this side or that. Oh God, that really clears things up. Okay, go on.
Well, so that's basically it. So let's say, for example, that two people had a past life in which one was ill and the other person was the caregiver. Uh-huh. When they see that replayed in the life review, again, they may or may not feel complete with the experience. If they do feel complete with it, there's no karma. They go on to do something else. If they feel incomplete with it, now they have something they want to balance. Well, how would they do that? Probably they would just trade places. So the one who was ill plans the challenge of caregiving, and the one who was the caregiver plans the challenge of illness. That's really how it's done. It's really quite simple.
That's cool. So in that instance, what do you think these people are here to learn? Maybe, I don't know, humility, the sense of being comfortable with not having control on from the standpoint of the patient.
I think both of those things are certainly possibilities, but the primary lesson in that circumstance would probably be learning how to give and receive love. The caregiver is learning how to love. The one who is ill is learning how to receive love. So, the flow of love in the world is a big circle. If you cut the circle in half of it is receiving love, half of it is giving love. And this is why, if you are someone who does not allow others to give love to you, you're actually blocking the flow of love in the world just as effectively as if you
Yeah.
don't give love to others.
Well, I can put myself in that boat because I am very uncomfortable with flattery and attention. And I'm sure that has to do with my upbringing. Yeah, so that puts a new spin on it because I love giving love. And that whole thing's not going to work unless I let the circle flow. And a lot of my blog members are in that same predicament too, because so many of them have had a lot of judgment in their childhoods. So, how many people are usually in the planning situation helping you out?
Well, there's a small number of people who are going to play very significant roles. So your parents, your siblings, your best
Oh,
friend, enemies, if you're planning to have enemies.
mhm.
But then there's a outer ring of many, many people who are playing much briefer roles in your life. But the fact that the roles are brief doesn't mean they're not significant. For example, there's something that is sometimes referred to as a bump contract. That's an agreement you set up with somebody, and you basically say to the person pre-birth, here's what I'm planning. If I fall off this path, I want you to do something to bump me back on it. And the
Oh,
way you know that you have a bump contract with someone is that the relationship is usually very brief, but very intense, and it has a major impact on the course of your life.
that is fascinating. Uh, okay, what about walk-ins? What if you say, "Oh, no, the planners were right. Too much on my plate. I want out of here." And of course, some people take their lives, but some people, I guess, is that in the pre-planning? Like, look, throw me a life preserver if I've had enough and I want to check out. Trade places with me. Can that be
I think
part of
a walk-in could certainly be part of a pre-birth plan, but we modify our pre-birth plans constantly once we come into body. And the way we do that is that we leave the physical body at night when we sleep. We travel in the light body back to the other side,
Mhm.
and we meet with the significant people in our life, and we say, how is it going? Are we learning what we came to learn? Well, if you were not learning what you came here to learn and felt that you probably would not be able to, then you might say, okay, I think I need to start over with a new plan in another lifetime. I'd like to walk out of the body. Is there anybody else who would like to walk in?
Wow, that's interesting. Okay, what are some symptoms of those who don't know they're sort of off their plan, basically?
There's a feeling of what you could call discontent. Uh, there's a nagging sense, and this is what I had when I was in the corporate world, that I was supposed to be doing something else. I just didn't know what it was. I wasn't even sure how to figure out what it was. Uh, and there's a feeling that time is being wasted or not used as wisely as it could be. Uh, your soul will try to bump you back onto your pre-planned path
Mhm.
through aspiration and inspiration. So the things that you aspire to do or you feel inspired when you think about them, that's your soul communicating to you that this is the path for you.
Okay. Um, who do you think needs? Well, let's talk about past life regression and also between lives regression. Uh, for example, I think people with phobias, or birthmarks, or things like that, or all of a sudden they're suicidal when they hit 22, might benefit by past life regression because maybe there's some bleed through. Well, it's not past lives; there's no time, but other life regression. Uh, who do you think would benefit from past life regression?
A past life regression is very, very good at focusing in on one issue of any kind. So it
Mhm.
can be physical, mental,
Hmm.
emotional, spiritual. There's a process, the clinical term for it is abreaction, which is just a fancy term for something that happens in which, by going back to the past life origin of a current life issue,
Mhm.
there's often partial or sometimes complete healing of the issue in the current lifetime. Nobody really understands how abreaction works. I'll give you a simple example. I had a client a number of years ago, a man in his mid 50s. He had pain his entire life of unknown origin in his left heel. Doctors couldn't figure out what was causing it or what to do about it. In his past life regression, he saw himself as a young boy in India. He was walking through the jungle and he saw an animal that captured his attention. He started to chase the animal, tripped over a rock, and injured his left heel. In that lifetime, he was crippled for the rest of his lifetime and was very angry and bitter about it.
Yeah.
And so that carried over into this lifetime. Well, when he came out of the trance state, he told me the pain in my left heel is gone. And he sent me an email a month later and he said the pain is still gone. So just by going back to the origin, he healed the pain.
That is absolutely amazing. I remember reading Carol Bowman's Children's Past Lives. Have you ever read that book? Awesome. And her child had this horrible eczema, 4 years old, horrible eczema on his wrist, bleeding all the time. And he was really afraid of loud noises like fireworks. And she regressed him, or somebody did, and found out that he was a African-American soldier in the Civil War, was pulling up a cannon up a hill and got shot in the wrist. And there was explosions and stuff. So once he saw that, everything went away. No more fear. The eczema went away, etc. That's so cool.
Yeah, that's action. And again, we don't know how it works, but we know that it does work. And that's the value of a past life regression.
Okay. Now, Erik says that physical issues are like indigestion or anything. Usually it's your soul's way of telling you that you're not doing something you're supposed to be doing. Maybe it's that you're not quite on your life path. I don't know. Would either past life regression or between lives regression help with the nagging physical issues that your soul is giving you a signal?
It depends on what the cause of the physical issue is. Again, if it has a past life origin, then past life
regression. Otherwise, between lives regression, right?
Otherwise, between lives, yeah. If it's caused by you not being on the path that is best for you in this lifetime, then you want a between lives regression. And let me explain what happens in a between lives session.
Oh yeah, do.
So we go through a number of preliminary steps that are basically intended to relax the client. And then they go into a past life. We don't spend too much time there. At the end of the past life, they cross back over to the other side. They go home, so to speak, which is actually very easy, safe, natural, and gentle. Mm. When they get to the other side, most people are greeted by a spirit guide. You talk to the guide about why you were shown that particular past life and how it affected the plan for the current lifetime. Mm-hmm. And then we ask your guide to escort you to your council of elders. The council consists of the very wise, loving, and highly evolved beings who oversee reincarnation on Earth. And they know everything about you, not just the plan for your current life, but every past life you had as well. Mm. So if you're able to talk to the council, that is potentially a life-changing experience, because if it's for your highest good, they can answer literally any question you put to them. They can tell you what you planned, why, how you're doing in terms of learning the underlying lessons, how you can do better in terms of learning the lessons. Any question you put to them, they can answer.
God, I think everybody should undergo this.
I do too.
I mean, I think there's only benefit in it. That's so awesome. Now, who can be on the Council of Elders? Does it have to be angels or just any very evolved spirit?
I see a lot of variability in terms of what the clients say when they get in front of their council. A lot of times it's, they don't even see a human image. It's just the beings are light beings. They'll see an amorphous form. Okay. But they'll sense that these beings are unconditionally loving and totally non-judgmental. Yeah. Those are the two most common comments. They'll say, I could feel how much they love me, and I could sense that they knew everything about me, but had no judgment despite that. Mm. So sometimes people will also see some loved ones on the council. Sometimes they're angels or spiritual figures of significance. Jesus has appeared on a number of people's councils, various ascended masters. So there's a lot of variability in terms of who's on your council.
Oh, does each person have their own specific makeup of the council? or does that even change over time?
I think everyone has their own council, and then my understanding is there's a council to oversee all the councils.
Mm.
But in the Between Lives regression, you are going to your particular council, and they're the ones who know you intimately. They've followed you throughout eons of time and many,
Wow.
probably hundreds of incarnations. They know everything that happened in all of your past lives. They know what you're doing in this lifetime. And again, they can answer any question you put to them about why you're here, what you're supposed to learn, why you chose certain people to play certain roles, and where to go in the future.
How common is it for people not being able to be hypnotized or regressed in any way?
It's a minority of clients, but it does happen.
Wow.
I always say if you meet a hypnotist who tells you he has a 100% success rate, run in the other direction, because none of them do.
Oh no, of course
But
not.
the vast majority of people can be hypnotized. The key to the whole thing is to relax deeply. Something that I do that I think helps people is that when they purchase a regression with me, I send them a link to a 20-minute guided relaxation recording. And I say, practice listening to the sound of my voice at least 10 times before your session. Not everyone does that, but if they do, then it really helps them in the session.
Yeah.
The other thing people can do is meditate. If you meditate in the weeks leading up to your session, that greatly increases the likelihood of going into trance.
Oh God, that'd be so awesome. Now, when you are regressed, do you also get, like, would I be able to see Erik probably?
Absolutely. If he wanted to be part of it, and if you wanted him to be part of it,
I
you
mean,
absolutely would.
that's got to be so healing for grievers too. Not only
Yeah,
knowing what they plan for their life, it was the loss of their loved one, part of the plan, and also, hey, my loved one is an eternal being. He's still here. He just doesn't have a body, and he's in some parallel dimension. So,
yeah,
wow.
that's certainly one of the great benefits of doing a Between Lives regression. I also offer it as a standalone session, which I call Contact with Deceased Loved One session.
Mm.
In either one of those, you can make contact with the loved one on the other side. And invariably, people report that the loved one is thriving on the other side. They're joyful, they're happy, regardless of what happened while they were here in body. And just seeing that is deeply healing.
Oh boy, that's, I can imagine. Where's your office? Where do you live?
I'm in Dayton, Ohio, but I'll tell you 99% more of the clients are doing the sessions by phone or Skype, and it works just as.
Oh, that is so awesome. I did not realize that. I thought that I would have to be in your office. Oh my gosh. Guys, contact him. I'll put your website on a little title page in the YouTube. But you guys, seriously, I think everybody should have Between Lives regression. I really do. I'm going to get it. I'm going to hook myself up with an appointment with you. Now, okay. Now I've seen that there's these apps that will determine your life purpose. What are those all about? Are any of those worth the salt? No.
I had not heard that before, and I'm not familiar with them.
I can't remember. Something dragon. Um, I don't know. But okay, what about astrology to figure out your life plan? There's talk about especially Indian astrology, which is much more detailed than Western astrology.
I think astrology of any kind really is a great way to find out about your life plan. Any good astrologer should be able to tell you quite a bit. Numerology is another very good way. Meditation, dream work, automatic writing, palm analysis. Your life plan is encoded in your palm print.
Really?
Any of those ways are good ways to find out.
What about your iris? Don't people read irises?
There are people who read irises. I don't really know anything about that myself.
I don't either. Yeah.
I know it's done.
All right. So before we go on to the services you offered, you already mentioned a couple of them. Let's talk about your books. Your first one was Your Soul's Plan. Can you tell me is that the one? Well, I remember that lists all the different kinds of suffering that people can go through and what the possible. Well, you tell the audience because I know and they don't.
Well, the format of both books, Your Soul's Plan and Your Soul's Gift, is basically the same. It's a personal story, a true story of someone who experienced a particular challenge.
Right.
Of 1, 2, or sometimes 3 sessions with the mediums and channels in which we ask Spirit, was this planned before birth? And if so, why? And then I present all the information that came through. So depending upon which medium or channel we're working with, sometimes we talk to a deceased loved one. Sometimes we talk to the person's higher self. Sometimes we talk to a spirit guide or an angel. One of the channels Jesus. So we ask him, what did this person plan and why? One of the other channels an ascended master named Aaron, who reads the Akashic record. So by going into the Akashic record, he can tell us what was planned. The difference between your soul's plan and your soul's gift is that they focus on different challenges. So if you just go to Amazon and look at the table of contents, you can find out which one would apply most to your life.
Probably both. Probably both. The Akashic record, so that has all the information about you and all your lives, past, present, and future, right?
It does, but what a lot of people don't realize is that it has the record of everything that's relevant to life on the earth plane, including the pre-birth planning. So if you're talking to a being on the other side who can access the Akashic record, you can find out what happened in the person's pre-birth planning session.
Wow. So the records, it's not like you go in the library and open up a book and read it. It's just the person like Aaron sort of fuses with the energy of the record, or how does that work?
You know, I really could not tell you how Aaron goes about reading the Akashic record. I have seen written reports from people in body who read the Akashic record, and many of them do report that they go to a place that looks like a library. They meet a very loving and wise being who is the record keeper, so to speak. They tell that being what they're interested in learning about, and then he takes them to a particular book.
So it is kind of a book. Oh, cool. Okay.
Well, a very different kind of book, though. The people who report seeing a book talk about how when you turn the pages, you see 3-dimensional images of different scenes, and then you can immerse yourself in them and experience the scene as though you're actually there.
Is that cool or what? That is, I did not know that. That's awesome. All right, let's talk about your services. I'm going to schedule a Between Lives reading with you. I definitely am. I want you blog members to do the same. So you do that, and you do this where you can actually hypnotize somebody so that they can go across the veil and see their loved ones.
Right. So there are several forms of hypnosis: the Between Lives regression, contact deceased loved one regression, past life regression, and then there's a discount package of the past life and the Between Lives for a discounted price. And then there's one type of session that is not hypnosis. It's called a spiritual guidance session. And that is conversation from a pre-birth planning perspective, where we talk about what lessons you're probably here to learn through certain experiences.
And so you do that one-on-one with the person, right? I mean, it's like Robert Schwartz to like you're a spiritual counselor, basically.
Right. And the people who do the spiritual guidance session, they have a specific option they can choose, which is something called the Divine Virtues exercise. This is an exercise I created that by the time you're done with it, it gives you insight into it's usually 2 or 3 qualities that you planned before birth to cultivate, like compassion we talked about earlier. That's one of the divine virtues. So by the time you go through this process, you figure out which virtues you're working on. And that is very valuable information to have, because you work with it retroactively and proactively. Retroactively, it allows you to see the deeper meaning of the challenges you've experienced. Proactively, when something challenging comes along in the future, you remind yourself that you're here to cultivate compassion, patience, and empathy, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And then you simply ask yourself, knowing that, how can I work with this new challenge to cultivate those virtues? So again, it has the effect of assigning meaning to experiences that otherwise might seem to be meaningless suffering.
Well, would that take the place of Between Lives regression, or would it make sense to do both?
A Between Lives regression is more comprehensive, because the virtues that you plan to work on, that's part of the reason you plan your challenges, but there's more to it than that. And if you want to know the more, you have to talk to your counsel.
Yeah. All right. So what are some of the other divine virtues?
Oh, it's things like unconditional love, self-love, patience, forgiveness, empathy. There are now, I believe, 28 in the
Wow.
exercise. And the list is not intended to be exhaustive. There are hundreds and hundreds of virtues that we work
Yeah.
on. But these are the ones that I have seen the most in my work. They're the ones that come up the most in the pre-birth planning sessions when people are planning big challenges for themselves.
Yeah.
And something that's interesting about it is that when you're talking about the virtues in the context of pre-birth planning, it's not just that you want to cultivate the virtues, but the pre-birth plan also calls for you to take the virtues you've cultivated and turn them outward, almost always in some form of service to others. So cultivation and expression through service are equally important from the soul's
Yeah.
perspective.
Can you imagine if everybody did this? You know, the spiritual guidance that you give, or the between lives sessions, and then turned out to be, wow, a lot of the problems of the world would just poof, go away.
Well, yeah. You know, when you boil it all down, we're really here to learn lessons in love, giving love,
Yeah.
receiving love. That is really the bottom line. And this is why, you know, you don't necessarily have to believe in pre-birth planning in order to fulfill your pre-birth plan.
Mm.
If you simply go through life giving and receiving love as much as you can, you would end up fulfilling your plan, even if you never heard about pre-birth planning.
Oh, absolutely. Um, I think a lot of my blog peeps, I call them, struggle with self-love. And so that's why they are seeking the spiritual. So I think that's probably a big one.
That is a very big one. It's one of the most common lessons that people are working on at this point in
Yeah.
linear time.
Mm.
And it's tremendously challenging. But I meet with people, I work with people who have succeeded in cultivating self-love. They've come from a place where there may even actually have been self-hatred at some
Yeah.
time in their life.
Mm.
And decades later, they're at a place of self-love. So it can be done. It is
Oh
being done.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. It must be a challenge though, because you cultivate this self love, but you're thrown back into an environment where people say you are not enough. You know, and or the media, parents, peers, etc. But if you do cultivate that self love, I bet your life in every arena improves: work, relationships, health, and so on. Right?
It does. And you know, when you really cultivate self-love and you find yourself thrown back into that kind of environment where people are criticizing you or challenging you in some way, when you really love yourself, those kinds of criticisms, you know, it's like water off a duck's back.
Oh, good.
Think to yourself, this person doesn't truly know who I am, and then you don't give it another thought after that.
So, thinking about how your work performance would probably improve if you get the between lives regression or the spiritual guidance, etc. I think it's probably one of the best investments that a person could make. You know?
I like to think so. I think anything you can do to get a better understanding of what you planned at the soul level before you were
Yeah.
born, that is a very worthwhile way to spend your time.
All right. Have you been regressed to between lives for yourself?
You know, I did it as part of the training, and my session was held in a hotel room. It was observed by a professional clairvoyant.
Mm.
And when we got to the part where I was supposed to go from the past life to the other side, all I saw was light, brilliant, blinding white light.
Mm.
But I didn't see a council. And the session ended at that point. So when I came out of it, I said, well, what happened? All I saw was bright light. And the clairvoyant said, well, I think I can answer your question. When you got to the part where you were seeing light, what I saw is that your guides were bringing the bed that you were lying on, and they were all beaming light to you. So
Mm.
that's why you saw that.
Wow. So, did you ever find out your life purpose?
I have not found out through a regression per se, but I have found out through extensive conversation with both Aaron and Jesus
Oh,
through the
yeah.
two channels who channel them. And basically, my life is about uh, the courageous expression of my truth. I had a past
Mhm.
life in Atlantis where I was a citizen opposed to what the government was doing,
Ah,
but I didn't have the courage to speak out against it. Same thing happened again in Nazi Germany. I was a German citizen opposed to what the Nazis were doing, didn't have the courage to speak out against it. So when I saw these two lives in my life review, I thought, all right, there are lessons to learn here about speaking my truth courageously.
mm,
And that was a large part of the motivation for doing what I now do in this lifetime. I wanted to have the experience of speaking a truth that is not yet in the mainstream,
yeah.
because I didn't do that in those past lives.
But you're a rebel, Robert. You're a
Oh,
rebel.
of sorts. Yeah.
Good for you. Um, and I think that it is hard for people in the spiritual, like you and I are, to to stand up and speak out about it because there's so much backlash. There are so many trolls, and you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the time where everybody thought the world was flat, and then some guy, who was it, Copernicus, Galileo, said it was round, and oh gosh, he got criticized, ridiculed, maybe thrown in jail. I can't remember, but guess what? The world is round. You know?
Yeah, and I think someday everybody will know that we plan our lives before we're born, the same way everybody
Yeah.
knows the world is round, but we're not there yet.
No.
Um, but I'm trying to get this information out there in every way I can.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think material science probably um, did a lot of damage to. I mean, because we used to be more spiritual during the times of the ancient mystics, etc. But I think science is now bridging the gap a little bit, hopefully. And yeah,
We're getting there.
yeah.
Yeah.
I remember Arthur. I don't remember when it was before my time, but Arthur Schopenhauer said that truth goes through three phases. First, it's ridiculed, then it's scorned, and then eventually it's accepted as self-evident. Now, I think spirituality and what you do is, going through those phases.
Yeah, and I think it's becoming more self-evident to people. There are more and more people who are developing the ability to see their guides, talk to their guides, see
Yeah.
angels, talk with angels, remember their astral travels at night while they're sleeping. And now there's a whole group of children being born who actually remember their pre-birth planning.
Yeah.
So
Oh, wow, really?
it's being taken to a whole new level now.
I knew that a lot of them remembered their past lives, but I had no idea. Wow, that's interesting. I was going to say something else. What was it? I'm old, so I'm forgetful. It's gone. Is there anything else you want to share?
Well, speaking of the children, I'll just share with you, I've met children who remember choosing their parents.
Wow.
Uh, I was at Findhorn, the spiritual community in Scotland, a number of years ago, giving a talk, and I was introduced to a young boy about 8 years old and his sister who was about 6, and I had been told that they remembered choosing their parents. So I asked the boy, what was it like to choose your parents? And he said, well, my sister and I were shown all of the people who could be our parents, but with two of them, there was all this light around them. And so I turned to
Oh,
my sister and I said, let's choose them. And that's how we did it.
oh my gosh, that's sends chills. That's a beautiful story.
Yeah.
It really is. All right, so how can they get in touch with you so they can uh, order your services?
Well, the website again is yoursoulsplan.com,
Okay.
or they can email me at rob.schwartz, schwartz, at yoursoulsplan.com, or use the contact form on the website. The books, Your Soul's Plan, Your Soul's Gift, any bookstore or library should be able to order them. And if anyone listening is interested in doing any of the sessions, I would be honored to work with you.
All right, you guys do it, and I will put your website on the YouTube. Thank you so much. I'm so proud of you. I just love you. You are doing something so very important, you know?
And so are you as well. Yeah.
Oh God, it's awesome. All right. Well, I'm honored to know you. I'm honored to be able to get so much wisdom from you. You guys, check this guy out. Really, you need to. Okay. Bye. And thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
It was a wonderful pleasure. Bye.
Bye-bye.